Well, here we are, folks. The left liberal machine is melting down in spectacular fashion, not just in America, but all across the world over Trump's 2024 victory. And the fireworks are nothing short of dazzling. From the frantic social media threads to the pundits clutching their pearls on cable news, the message is clear. How could this happen? The answer, of course, is that while the left was busy lecturing America's voters on morality and creating the ultimate list of reasons why Trump voters are irredeemable, they forgot something critical. Simply talking to real, everyday Americans. And while I enunciate this piece today here, viewer, I want you to think of people all around the world and voters all around the world, because this isn't restricted to just America. For years, the left liberal ecosystem seemed to live in its own curated world. This was a place where anyone who disagrees with us is a racist, sexist, xenophobic monster. Wasn't just a hyperbole, it was practically gospel. Just look at the videos that have been coming out from America since Trump's victory. In this cozy echo chamber that I touched upon yesterday, they fed each other a steady diet of moral superiority and outrage. So naturally, when the left liberals presented themselves as the only correct choice in this American election, they assumed voters would thank them and simply fall in line. Well, spoiler alert, Americans, like voters everywhere, don't particularly like being patronized. Let's be clear. The left liberal campaign seemed to consist more of scolding and shaming people than actually addressing their concerns. The issues everyday Americans were worried about: rising costs, border concerns, education, their paychecks. They were brushed off as the talking points of bigots, with the media reminding voters that if they dared to entertain such ideas, they were likely falling down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole. This election cycle in America was full of what seemed like lectures about the threat to democracy. Sound familiar? And the soul of the nation. Sound even more familiar? Rather than addressing what voters wanted in their day-to-day lives. Instead of working to broaden their message, the left doubled down on the condescension and alienated voters with their moralistic tone. Phrases like historical justice and democracy at stake filled the airwaves in America. But the average US voter just heard, if you're considering Trump, you're a problem. While some on the left claim to be of the people, they seem to forget that their people actually include a huge swath of the country who may indeed be undecided or even learning towards the other side, towards Trump. The left bet hard that they could shame the swing voter into submission, assuming that Trump's flaws were so obvious that anyone with half a conscience would simply reject him. But lo and behold, voters are autonomous beings, not Twitter hashtags. For many, their choice wasn't about embracing Trump, but rejecting left liberal ideology that made them feel like they had no place in their own country. So here's the truth bomb that I offer to you, viewer. And like I said, this is not something that is restricted to America alone, but to elections everywhere. This wasn't a referendum on the goodness of Americans or even on Trump. It was a referendum on a left liberal culture that thought it was too morally enlightened to bother meeting Americans where they were standing. Trump's victory was a resounding clapback from voters who were simply tired of the endless lectures and labels, exhausted from being treated like the enemy for wanting a better life. For millions of Americans, this election wasn't about taking sides in a culture war that was being imposed on them, but about putting food on the table, securing good jobs, keeping their neighborhoods safe, and ensuring their children have a decent education. What was wrong with wanting that, the voters were wondering. But rather than address these practical concerns, the Kamala Harris ecosystem, the left liberal world, seemed more focused on policing language, introducing endless trigger warnings, and elevating identity politics over real material needs. For the average American voter, the endless parade of demands to conform to woke standards felt like a smokescreen that obscured any serious effort to address their actual issues. Instead of engaging, the left liberal class seemed determined to tell people what they should care about, as if pronouns mattered more than paychecks. Many Americans felt they were being villainized for not embracing a progressive agenda they didn't see as relevant to their lives. This is, after all, an era post the pandemic where the economy is everything. The more the left liberals pushed issues like non-binary gender identity and privilege checklists, the more alienated average voters felt. The left liberals treated issues like economic security, border management, and crime as unsophisticated concerns, trivial next to their own moral, righteous crusade. The woke left liberal agenda asked Americans to fixate on grievances that seemed abstract or manufactured compared to the very real challenges that families were facing every single day across America. For working families juggling bills and safety concerns, the left's obsession with social justice semantics felt like a tone-deaf scolding rather than real advocacy, and it poisoned the entire Kamala Harris campaign. The message from voters was loud and clear. Have you seen the numbers, viewer? They couldn't have been more emphatic. Voters weren't looking for moral policing. They were looking for solutions. So Trump's victory was as much an endorsement of the man as a rejection of the left liberals' tone. It was a pushback against an elitist culture that seemed to live online more than in the real world, one that talked endlessly about inclusion but excluded anyone who questioned woke orthodoxy. Voters saw through this shallow activism that prioritized hashtags over hard work and genuine empathy. They were tired of being told that wanting safety, financial stability, and a future for their children made them problematic somehow. In their eyes, this election was a chance to put the brakes on an agenda, an elitist agenda, a systemic agenda that prioritized symbolism over substance. And the left's meltdown, which you can see in video after video on social media, whether on TikTok or Instagram or elsewhere, is a fitting response showing just how out of touch this class has become with the people, the very people they claim to champion. This lesson extends far beyond America's borders, serving as a wake-up call to the left liberal political ecosystem worldwide, from Europe, certainly to India, to Latin America. The left liberal class has been pursuing a similar agenda that often prioritizes symbolic gestures over tangible solutions to pressing issues. So even if you think, why is Shiv Aroor talking about the American election when India has so many of its own problems? Well, we are an electoral democracy, and there are so many parallels and lessons to learn for political parties and political planners with the way America has voted in 2024. The polarization, the war of the narratives, wokeism, identity politics. If we sit here in India and think there are no lessons, nothing to observe, nothing to pick up, we're living in our own little echo chamber. People everywhere want leaders who listen to them, who prioritize their immediate needs, and who respect their values and cultural realities, rather than scolding and chastising them for not subscribing to a one-size-fits-all global ideology.